So let's start human relations. This is the agenda. Start with 3 case studies. Take those case studies from all of you. We'll create an action plan for proficient human relations. We'll validate the first draft of the action plan that we come up. We'll authenticate the validated divine plan for organization planning. When I say divine, there's a specific meaning based on the 6 letters that constitute divine. I've illuminated in my books is that D stands for conscious determination. I stands for imagination, V for virtue, I for intuition, N for natural, and E for excellence. When we talk about a divine plan, it means that it's something which has been consciously determined to have a virtue to achieve the goal in a natural way with excellence. The metaphysics of taboo, prejudice, and discrimination, dynamic solution for the prudent management of human relations. And finally, understanding human relations using the concept of stillness, a core element in Indian wisdom, that if you are still, you can be more dynamic and active. The effects, antecedents, and consequences of stillness. Stillness is connected with human relations. And concluding remarks. In terms of priority, my goal is that we'll cover the first 4. We'll get to the next 2. And finally, if you have time, we'll look at the last 3. Any comments on the agenda? Any adjustments, alterations, or any enhancements? So hearing none, feel free to intervene at any moment. Case study, to take the audience approach. Which organization's case study on human relations is your favorite entire program at IIM Lucknow? You could have studied that as part of your courses, or you could have studied that in the magazines, or discuss that otherwise in your dormitories. Which organization has been your most favorite, which has taught you some insights about human relations that you want to carry forward with you? Okay, so Madhukar, can you explain? You're talking about MetLife. Can you please tell us why MetLife, what have you learned about human relations from MetLife?
Sure, sir. So one, of course, it comes from my work experience because I worked with them for a while. And secondly, we just discussed them in our last class with Professor Uppal, where we discussed how, one of their employee wanted to undergo a gender change surgery. And not only they accepted them open-heartedly, and they also provided the entire support and the more than the physical support, as in the monetary support for the surgery and all. They also provided a kind of safe environment where the person could feel safe to come out with his or her desire to become from a male to female person. So I think that is incredible for an organization of that size to go to that length.
Kushagra, you're talking about Taj Hotels, and why Taj Hotels?
Yes. So it was about behavior in organization. So this case study talks about how Taj Hotels look for certain qualities in the employees they hire, and how they develop and enhance these qualities, and what difference it makes compared to the other hotel chains, and how it makes them.
We discussed Hi, Swapnesh here. So we discussed Dr. Amita Joshi's case from Samuel Trust Limited, in which the conflict between her and her subordinate, Mr. Rajesh Mishra, was put forward, and we discussed how the structure of organization plays a big role in the human relations, and how managing that structure and managing human relations are important to for overall company as well.
Okay, so you're talking about, of course, the person matters, then organization structure matters. The early examples were about leadership and what leadership is thinking about, and then where the structure facilitates that. There are 2 camps. One that talks about really the people, the individuals, the persons are the ones which are making decisions. They have the agency, and that's what matters in management. The other school says that no, the situation, it shapes what kind of decision a manager can take, because in different situations, managers may end up taking different decisions. And therefore, it's an affordance that a manager has. That's what matters. 2 elements. One, the intrinsic value of the person matters. Second, the extrinsic value and how do you read your environment matters, right? So in your human relations and in your program, you're learning both skills. How do you make assessment of your intrinsic values and gain more confidence about the values that you bring in as a person, as a manager, as a professional, to any situation for managing human relations. But in addition, you're also learning about how do you make assessment of extrinsic values so that you don't end up like an idealistic person who reaches nowhere. So you have to connect your intrinsic values with extrinsic values and make sure that whatever you're doing that's culturally sensitive, culturally appropriate, and you use culture as affordance to move you forward. If you took a very standard approach in all countries, in all parts of India, in rural markets, urban markets, young people, old people, women, men, then essentially you are creating an adverse human relation to begin with. There are two elements. Reality is somewhere in between. You cannot just go by your intrinsic values. You cannot go just by extrinsic value. You have to correlate your intrinsic value with extrinsic value and find a correlation that can sustain. Only then you can sustain yourself in maintaining human relations. You have anticipated my next question. Who led your favorite organization's human relations model? What was that person's leadership model? If we are talking about organization, there is somebody who's leading it. Of course, there's a structure, but there's a person. The second question, which is very relevant from a management perspective and management education, is to what extent whatever you are studying is portable, that's transferable from one situation to another, from one person to another. So if you are reading things, you are reading case studies, and if you are not able to see how what you are learning is something that you can implement in your life, either in a positive or negative way, or in a creative way. It may be that you read something and you say that, okay, I'm going to do something different in a competing manner, or I will do something in a complementary manner because this is how people behave. I'm not going to behave how people behave, but I'm going to complement how other people behave. So the first perspective is I'm going to compete with whatever other people are behaving. So this is a leader. I want to be a unique leader, so I'm going to be different. I'm going to compete with this person. I'm going to be better. Or I'm going to be different. So that's one perspective. The second is what we are learning that has now become common knowledge. A lot of people are following that approach. All my friends are learning from that. And therefore, I want to become a super leader. I don't want to become leader that my friends are going to be. And therefore, the way I can be super leader is I can complement whatever they're going to do. So I'm going to be one step further because not only I'm going to move myself forward, I'm going to move everybody forward. And therefore, I'm going to move the entire organization forward. So I'm not going to compete, I'm going to complement. The third approach is I'm going to supplement. And the supplement model is that these things are happening, that there are a lot of people who are going to complement, but there are other things that need to be done because maybe what leaders are doing right now, they are making richer people rich because they're targeting customers with affluent kind of pockets, and they're targeting workforce who has money to invest in talent and their education. So if I want to participate in perpetuating and growing those inequities in the world, in the last 20 years, we know that the inequities in the world have increased at the unprecedented pace. And now, whatever, about 15% of people own about 85% of world's wealth. And that percentage has gone in the wrong direction in an extremely rapid way in the last 25 years and had accelerated in a much more significant way in during the pandemic. So the pandemic has been a godsend for the rich. It has never been so good for the rich. If rich have to find an easy solution to become richer, they would say that God, please send pandemic every day. That's the easiest solution. Why? Because all the poor people and all the middle class, they will have to go to digital platforms, which are owned by rich people, by Amazon and others. And therefore, that makes rich people richer. They get more data and they get rich, right? So all of us have made rich people richer during the pandemic. So that has been a very easy solution. So that's a supplement model. You might say that I don't want to do that. I don't want to compete with that model. I don't want to complement that model. I want to supplement the model. Right? So my human relationship is going to be very different. So I don't want to become a super leader. I want to become a supra leader. right? Because what I want to do is I want to make the people who are zeros, I want to make them the leaders. So I want to make them the supreme leaders so that they can dislodge this cycle of increasing concentration, right? So I want to be a change that produces a change. You could have any of the three approaches, that you are going to be the person who is going to create supreme leaders. And that's how you're going to make your name, fame, and money. Or no, I'm going to work in the corporates and I'm going to continue the process. I'm going to accelerate the process of making poor people poor. Who led your favorite organizations, whether they were just mentioned or not? The human relations model, and what was that person's leadership model? And you know of other leaders with a similar leadership model. Can I get some hands on this issue?
So Tatas have historically done well for themselves as well as the community or the employees that work with them. So if we look at the case of how they have developed a small town into a very good smart city, Jamshedpur, and what all policies they offer, even though it's part of their CSR, but they go extra mile to make sure that their employees are living happy, their families are living happy, and they have all the basic needs provided in that town. So that's one of the ways that you just mentioned, how they want others to develop as well as the company also.
Very good. Okay, so that's a good example that they say that our employees who may be coming from very underprivileged backgrounds, so their growth is probably disproportionate to us. So we have grown 5 times, but they have come maybe earning kind of almost nothing, and their income has been disproportionate to our growth, and that's what we want to do, right? We want to grow as a super leader by making other supreme leaders, right? Is there an opportunity beyond that for relating with the humanity? So that's a great example, Sapnesh. So you clearly identified kind of how you can be a super leader to make other supreme leader. Okay. Now the next model is where, of course, in Indian tradition, we talk about a Niswarth leader, right? So if you're a god, is God saying that I'm going to benefit also, and you're also going to benefit, and I'm just going to make sure that you are going to benefit more? But unless I benefit, I'm not going to, so I'm not interested. So I'm going to exclude everybody else. Okay, so can you share some leadership models where the leader is more of a mentor and a coach to make sure that everybody else becomes sort of an infinite leader? So a leader, essentially kind of a leader who's making others also leaders. So when we talk about an infinite leader, that's essentially a leader who's making so you create a chain. So I train you to be a leader. So I'm a god, I train you to be leader. So essentially you become the god and you train the next person as a leader. So that becomes a chain that leads to mass empowerment one step at a time. Right, but if that one step is happening in a very rapid way, because you're involving so many people and everybody's helping each other and coaching each other, right? For instance, I'll give you just one quick example of self-help groups like Grameen Bank and others. It's a very old model, but it's based on this idea that that each person in the group knows something. Okay, and can we leverage that knowledge? Of course, Grameen Bank didn't operate in that way. They operated more in terms of, is there a person who can train everybody else? But when it was implemented in India, it was implemented that how each person can train each other. Similarly, in Japan, when the small group model was introduced after the World War II, it was all based on how can we come together and train each other in things that we know. Okay, so given that kind of their external help is very costly, the company doesn't have the money, but if each person knows something, they can train each other, and that way we can move forward much faster. And then once we exhausted internal learning, If we can have our suppliers teach each other and teach us, and we teach the suppliers, then we'll have accelerated learning. And so that's the model they implemented until 1990, before essentially they left the model, because the youngsters who came in, they were not interested in the painstaking approach. Okay, so every new generation, they want to take a different approach. And so Japan has been sort of a bit lost since then. But that was their model for rapid growth from almost complete destruction after World War II to 1990. So that essentially, I will call that an infinite leadership model. Okay, so now we are going from supreme leader to a God model, which was implemented by Grameen Bank, where a manager is helping all the women. Okay, the manager is like a god. Okay, so that model is called not the supreme leader, but a para leader. Para leader means something transcends the leadership. So what we are seeing as a leadership is the self-help group. Somebody who transcends that is a para leader, P-A-R-A, para leader. Okay. But when you are activating leadership of each person, unique leadership of each person, so that it becomes like a cascading effect. Okay, so you create an infinity where each previous person is helping other person, next person, and it becomes like a circle, a complete circle. So a circle is like an infinity that keeps going. That's called an infinite leadership model, or a primeval leadership model, Primeval, primeval leadership model. Let me write it here. Okay, so what we have learned is that you can be a leader, right? Or you could be a super leader. You could be a supra leader. You could be a supreme leader. You could be a para leader. Or you could be a primeval leader. Okay, the energy values of them are in that order, because we saw that each one is one step more than the previous one. So when you look at leader's energy is 0. It's like a Raja. Raja doesn't do anything, plays golf. Okay, but has everybody else do things. So it gets all negativity and positivity. It's like Indra, the king of deities, has a 0 value. Okay, so that's why in India we say Shunya starts everything. Then super leader becomes 1, supra leader becomes 2, supreme leader becomes 3. Okay, it's actually we are missing one. Because the one which is 1 is actually a follower. So the super leader actually becomes 2, and supra leader becomes 3, because you need a follower also somewhere. Okay, and then supreme leader becomes 4. It's like a Bhagwan. Okay, and then your para leader becomes a Ishwar, like a god. That's 5. Then your infinite leader becomes like a Mahesh or Khuda. Okay, so Mahesh, so that's 6. And then when we have infinite leaders, right, then essentially who develops that infinite leadership within oneself is called an absolute leader, a param leader. Okay, so a param leader will be 7. Okay, so I'll leave it there, but essentially those are different leaders, and it gives you an idea that why it's important to discriminate among these different approaches to leadership, and we see each one of them in practice. Right, a param leader essentially says that I am the leader. So essentially, I have as much leadership power as anybody else has. Okay, so I'm not going to make anybody else my leader. I'm going to recognize that I have the same gifts that Mother Nature has given for leadership than anybody else has. So I'm not going to have a conception or perception or consciousness of deficit in me. Therefore, I am an absolute leader. Okay, so so essentially that gives you that absolute power to be a role model, possibly for other people, with your confidence, with your actions, with the knowledge that you have, right, to implement what you want to do. Okay, so that's really the only way in which you can buck the trend of inequities. When each person recognizes they have the leadership power and they stop being followers of others. Because as long as people have a followership mindset, they'll always be exploited and manipulated by one who are leaders for their personal gain. Right, so that's the fundamental nature of Mother Nature. Okay, so let's move on with this, with that background. Okay, so the question then becomes, now taking you as a leader, okay, or an absolute leader, if you need to reproduce the proficiency of human relations that you identified that MetLife has, or Taj Hotels has, or some individuals have, by making the organization the guru, okay, the organization that is following that, and taking the leader as the super guru, okay, maybe the follower as the guru, okay, and taking the leader as the super guru. What needs to be done in which priority sequence? So suppose you come up with an idea, right? It could be, your idea could be based on multiple leaders. You look at multiple leaders who have absolute power, who have confidence, and they are successful. And so you take multiple of them, and you say that, okay, this is my ideal leader. This is the leader that I want to be. Okay, what's the first step? If you have to implement a proficient human relations model in your life, where would you start? Yes.
So since we have established that leadership is a correlation between.
Actually, I can't hear you.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes. So since we have already established that leadership is a correlation between intrinsic and extrinsic values, maybe we start with identifying the same of the person we are trying to imitate.
So identify what you're saying. Are you a profile of the person? What? No. What are you going to identify?
The intrinsic and extrinsic values of.
Okay, so you want to look at intrinsic and extrinsic values. What I'm saying is that now we are moving a step forward. We already constructed the profile of the person that we want to be. Okay, so you know that this is the profile. This is the intrinsic and extrinsic value, right? So you know the environment, that the environment is that most people are trying to be leader. Some of them are trying to be super leaders by hiring others who can be the leaders, right? So they can exponentiate their power. Okay, so because if you're trying to manage the 7 billion people on your own, you're not going to become the number one. You will become number one if you have sort of 5 people reporting to you, and there are 25 people reporting to those 5 people, and there are 125 people reporting to them, and you create a pyramid. That's how you get number one. That's how you become Elon Musk. Or you become someone who can go to space while everybody's toiling here, right? Using the money that everybody gave them. So if you want to vote, right? So you identified whether you want to be that person, Sarv Shaktiman, right? Omnipotent, or you want to be another kind of leader. So the question is, how do you go about executing that? Okay, what's the next step? What's the first? Because that will be the first step. Okay, so what's the first step now? This is already we have already done the literature review. Okay, so you're moving, you have to move with the time. Okay, whatever we have done, finished. Okay, next step. Always fresh thinking, fresh living. So that's what we believe in. Yes, please. Shubham?
So maybe identify the positive traits that can be copied from one person to another, and specifically whether I can copy that or not.
Okay, so the two things you are saying that again, identify the profile. We have already identified that. Secondly, you are saying that whether I can copy that or not. So you're saying that I have a doubt in my ability to, first of all, I want to copy, right? So I don't want to create a different model using a competing model. I don't want to complement it. I don't want to supplement it. So I just want to be the leader. I want to be that 0 unit leader. So we know that if a knowledge is common knowledge, it has no incremental value. So essentially you're saying that your first step is that how I can be a 0 leader, 0 energy leader. So if you set your goal to be a 0 energy leader, then you will end up with a 0 energy leader. So it's important that you prioritize, you set sky as your limit, not start at the bottom. Okay, so you need to have more confidence. Okay, so who can show more confidence?
Sir, so creating the roadmap and
Okay, I can't hear you, please. Yeah, Palappu.
Yes. Yes, sir. This is Puneet. So creating the roadmap of our objective and building the talent pool with a like-minded team.
Very good. Okay, so creating a roadmap. So let's say that we need to create a sort of a plan, organization planning, right? So we need some kind of organization planning now, some kind of planning, some kind of roadmap. So very good. So that's the way to think that if you have to do that, you already know what it is. Even if you don't know, the first step is to plan, right? And when we talk about organizational planning, we are talking about organization is something which creates normative planning. Okay, why? Because when an organization plans, everybody, it becomes a plan of everybody. It norms planning of each and every individual within that organization. So an organization planning is a normative planning. It's intended to create a norm, a normative value, a normative ideal among all the people in the organization.
So just to intervene, Professor Vipin, because to give contextual example, for example, when a new IIM comes up, they always begin with what odd they must do, although they deviate later on. But towards the beginning, the planning is always in the perfect page of papers. So they create all the ought tos, what all they are supposed to do. And then later on, they may deviate. So I think because now, Professor Vipin, we have 20 IIMs and several IITs and NITs. I thought just to intervene so that there could be a contextual relevance to the wonderful phenomena of normative planning you talked about.
Absolutely, Professor Uppal, that's a very good example, and actually, you anticipated in your response several elements. Because you have a normative planning, which is organization planning, then the question is, why do you deviate from norm? You deviate from norm because normative planning becomes your intrinsic value within the organization. You deviate from plan because even though it's an organizational planning, it's not an ecosystem planning. Okay, so different organizations have their own planning. And then you may realize that some other norm is having a much better effect than your norm. Your intrinsic value is not as effective as other people's. Maybe there's another intrinsic value that's more effective. We already talked about these are all intrinsic values from 1 to 7 or 0 to 7. Right? So if you're following one model and you realize that the other model is giving you more reputational benefits, more economic benefits, more psychological well-being. Sometimes people say that, okay, money is one element, but do I feel happy at the end of the day? do I feel fulfilled? Or if I'm running after all this, and after that also kind of have to get drugs and other kind of things to alter my consciousness, because I'm not enjoying what it is, because everybody else is poor and I'm living in a sort of a place with poverty all around me. I can't even get out of the home, so I'm living artificial life. Right? So I can't be free and move around. And so when we talk about ecosystem planning, it's a transformative planning. Why? Because ecosystem is always changing. Why ecosystem is always changing? Because Mother Nature is dynamic. Every moment, every day, in a different situation emerges. Sometimes a pandemic comes, sometimes an earthquake comes, sometimes water is more, sometimes water is less, sometimes there's sunshine that leads to more farming. Sometimes there's more traffic as a result of water clogging. Even in developed countries, there's wildfires. So every day is unique. Every moment is unique. And therefore, ecosystem planning is always transformative planning. Okay. But when an individual is planning, not an organization, not an ecosystem, but an entity, when an entity is planning, it's always a formative planning. Because an entity's approach is more technological, that how can I take my input and convert that into output? So it's not normative, it's formative. It forms the reality that you want to implement using who you are right now. Okay, so there's three things. So formative planning, the entity does a formative planning, the organization makes it a normative planning, and the ecosystem forces you to create a transformative planning. Right, so that's why kind of it's always like that U-shaped curve, because people don't understand that each three require a different kind of planning. They tend to normalize all three plans without recognizing the creativity that each entity has and the liberty, the freedom that Mother Nature has. You may try to master Mother Nature by saying that I'm going to normalize my reality and my values, but Mother Nature knows better. She knows that by creating only one kind of intrinsic value and not having any dynamism, you are not going to enjoy that life. So she has already prepared and done her organization planning to make sure that your foolish and limited knowledge ideals don't limit you. Okay, so she makes sure that you go beyond kind of your thinking, whether or not you are happy or not. Because ultimately, what matters is your long-term health and long-term joy, not your temporary emotions based on your limited knowledge and based on your idea that I want to take leadership and normalize everything. Because if Mother Nature had given you that power, then she has to take away the power of creativity from each entity, and she has to sacrifice her originality to give you the power to control and normalize things as a leader. Therefore, the leader has zero value. Okay, so when the leader kind of aggregates kind of the things which are ascending and things which are descending, because the environment changes, whatever you're done, whatever you grow, it meets its entropy. So leader ends up with a zero value. That's what is called equilibrium condition. In economics, equilibrium condition has zero value. Right? In Hindi, our ancient sages translated that as Shanicharam. Shanicharam is the form of Shani, which is barely moving, inertial. It's barely moving because it's not moving, but there's dynamism inside. That's zero, that's shunya. Okay, so let's move on with that. So what needs to be done?
Sir, there was a hand raised in between. I did not notice the name.
There was
Sir, this is
Singh?
Puneet only, sir. So I just had a similar question. Does
sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the leadership, since we are discussing about the leadership styles and the transformation planning, so the leadership style should be followed by the business objective, or will it be the vice versa? And I think you have answered the question.
Pardon?
So since we are discussing about the leadership styles and the transformation planning, so does it be always the leadership style should be followed by the business objective, or the business objective should be followed by the leadership style?
Okay, so you're talking about whether the objective should determine the style, right? So first of all, we already discussed the important issue is to improve your discriminating consciousness about different leadership pathways that you have, right? So we discussed those leadership pathways where you can act as a leader, make another one as a follower who is working, right? Or you can act as a super leader, and we talked about all these different kind of models where you can sort of be a man. You can appoint a manager who is helping everybody else. So that manager is a like a para leader, because that manager is not taking leadership. Manager wants everybody else to take leadership. Grameen banks make money because women take leadership in what they're doing. The manager is there sort of as a coach, as a guide, as a way to prod them, as a way to ensure that they're disciplined, as a way to continue the model of self-help group, the Bangladesh model. The Indian model is different, where each person is training each other, okay, which we call it in-flight leader. So now you might say that the situation will determine what kind of leadership model you will do. The other perspective is it's you who have that freedom, because that's what we talked about, absolute leader. As an absolute leader, you have the freedom where to use which model, or whether to use only one model. Okay.
Yes,
the fact that there are all these different models exist will tell you that Mother Nature allows these different models, because in different situations, different models will work. Right. For instance, if you have already very wealthy people who are trying to take leadership, if you try to make them the leader, you essentially become a follower. They already have a power. Okay, so you may not want them so you may have a very different approach with them. Okay, so again, it depends really from what each person. Ultimately, it's also about what each person is there in their part of in their life. So the reason why in Bangladesh they have been unable to implement the model where each member of the self-help group teaches each other what they know is that in Bangladesh the gender discrimination is even higher than India. So women lack confidence, they lack exposure a lot. In India, even though the gender discrimination appears, but still women in villages oftentimes are extremely powerful. We have heard the stories where they have shut down all the liquor shops and things like that. So in India, we also have Durga and now all those role models in our kind of wisdom. And I'm not talking about just in terms of one religion, but across religions, they are role models, which are identified and which are celebrated in India much more than, for instance, in Bangladesh. And because of that cultural element, a primal leadership could become is possible. Of course, the way I suggested, you can create a sequence of leadership development. We start with one model based on the analysis of the environment and take that forward by developing the skills of people, by empowering them, by increasing their confidence. Or if that cannot be done with the current generation, do it with the next generation. So every generation, you can have a different leadership model. Okay. So again, I want to open your mindset to see the possibilities and to see the directions in which you can go with your life in terms of relating with humanity and relating as a human with everyone else and with yourself. Right. So what needs to be done? Sorry, here. Okay, so action plan. The action plan is that we need to bring ourselves in alignment with the goal of producing a proficient human relations. So this is the reading that I provided you, that unless you are in alignment with the goal. Okay, so in military, the reason why a side is more successful, even though it may be small, is because it's alignment with the goal of victory. The reason why our wrestler has got the silver medal in Olympics in Tokyo, because she was in alignment with what needed to be done. Both at the time when she was having that competition, that fight, that wrestling, but even otherwise, in terms of mentally, physically, intellectually. Okay, so she had to be present in alignment with the goal of producing a proficient human relations. So if you go ahead and say that I'm going to do organization planning, but if you're not in alignment with what's needed for organization planning, your organization planning is not going to be successful. And that's the reason why current thinking, the state-of-the-art thinking, is that planning makes no difference in organizational success. What matters is programs. What matters is our genes. Programs mean genes, genetics. Okay, so they talk about that what are organizational genes, what is the norms, what's the culture of the organization, and that culture, that norm, those genes of the organization, that routines is what matters for success of the organization. So the reason why Amazon succeeds, because it has a recipe that it has created that it replicates in everything it does. That's why Amazon becomes richer and richer. And the reason why other organizations are becoming poorer and poorer, because they already have a recipe for failure, a recipe for making themselves zero, recipe for lack of confidence, recipe for saying that, first of all, we need to decide what we need to do, and then we need to decide whether we can do it. So they waste 2 units of their energy even before they begin acting. While somebody who has a recipe, they're not even deciding what they need to do, and they don't need to decide whether they can do it. All they need to do is apply that recipe everywhere. Okay, so the current state-of-the-art thinking for the last 25, 30 years, and actually even more, is that planning does not matter. Okay, now from a cultural research, cross-cultural research, it is very evident that the people in the West, they are very poor planners. Okay, that's the part of their culture. They are not planning-oriented folks. They have more resources. Also, that's another factor. And as a result of their resources, they don't really need to plan. They have a lot of cushion for failure, and therefore failure is celebrated. So you'll hear that it's okay to fail. But in the East, if it is okay to fail, then you're wasting resources and people are dying, and they don't have the food, they don't have anything, and you don't get second chances. So if you're not confident how culture influences the media messages that you're hearing, and if you're not discriminating that many things are coming from the Western perspective, and if you take that as your reality, then that's a short way of failing and having challenges in your life and not being happy and saying that I need to go back, go to the US, I go to somewhere else. I want to run away from India. India is no good. The government is not doing the job. Okay. So again, Tirandaj has to always bring alignment. Arjun was able to hit the goal of hitting the eye. Okay, actually succeeding in his teacher's assessment. And teacher would not even allow him to shoot the arrow. He was not in alignment. So in ancient times, alignment was number one thing. Okay, so the question is that how do you bring yourself in alignment with the goal without knowing energy you need for realizing that goal? Okay, so if you have to hit a bullseye, you need to know how much energy you need to hit the bullseye. And then you need to make sure that whatever alignment you're doing, that starts with that energy. Right? So how much energy do you need for realizing the goal? How many units of energy? I already introduced you the concept of energy. Okay, so how many units of energy you need for realizing the goal? Okay, so let me answer that question. Let's take a resource-based approach. All of you know the resource-based approach or capability-based approach, essentially the affordances, right? So what affordances you have to bring into alignment yourself. So first, you need a goalkeeper. Okay, so you cannot achieve a goal without a goalkeeper. Why do you need a goalkeeper? You can keep the goal as the goal by conceiving a goal that can be realized and kept. Okay, so you need a goalkeeper. Now, how do you evaluate the energy of a goalkeeper? So a proficient goalkeeper is one who is very clear, who has strategic awareness of 4-dimensional space. उसके आगे क्या हो रहा है, पीछे क्या हो रहा है, बराबर में क्या हो रहा है. Okay, east, west, north, south. That person has full consciousness. And 3-dimensional time. Knows that how other people have prepared themselves in the past from their behavior, from their that demeanor. Okay, so the demeanor in war, demeanor in sports, demeanor in terms of competition. A astute goalkeeper knows where the player is going to shoot. And that's how they can do. And the reason why the astute goalkeeper knows where the player is going to shoot, because the goalkeeper reads the face, reads where the person is coming from, reads the past history of that person, reads the past history of that team that you're playing against, read the past history of the ground in which you are, read the past history of the weather and the climate that exists at that moment, the humidity, the sunlight. That's the reason why that person is able to stop the ball without any challenge, has enough time, is well prepared. Okay, so 4-dimensional space knows the past, knows the present. If the other person is also quick and changes the plan at the last moment with quick reflexes. Unless if you live in that present past, you said, okay, I'm confident. I know all the past. I'm well prepared. That's the moment in which you lose. Because you cannot lose your guard in the present. You have to be aware of the past, but you have to be conscious of the present. But then the reason why you do put on guard is you know the future. That if you fail here, You have failed the nation. You have failed everybody. You have failed yourself. You have failed your parents. You have failed humanity who believed in you as a human with tremendous power and gifts of Mother Nature. Okay, so you need to be aware of 4-dimensional space, 3-dimensional space, a time. So what's the energy value of goalkeeper? 7. Who is a goalkeeper? Ancient times, the goalkeeper was named as Shiva. Shiva translates into goalkeeper. That's the literal translation of Shiva. Shiva is the Param deity, not Param leader, but Param deity with energy value of 7. But any conscious entity, when we talk about Siddha, a Siddh is a conscious entity who's conscious of 4-dimensional space, 3-dimensional time. Knows your past, present, and future, knows what's happening in 4-dimensional space. That person is called Siddh in India. That Siddh is also incarnation of Shiva. Essentially, Siddh is Shiva with the energy value of 7. So Siddh means conscious entity. Even though Mother Nature gives us birth as a conscious entity, unfortunately, we are not conscious entities. We don't live as conscious entities. We let consciousness of everything else burden our life as a conscious entity. Therefore, the way we become conscious entities is through practice, so that तप कर रहे हैं तो है ना गर्मी से जो भी है ना मैल है वो सब हटा रहे हैं. All the dirt we are removing. So we are not becoming Siddha. We are not becoming Shiva. We are Shiva. We are Siddha. We have become something else. So when you said what kind of leadership, we are already absolute leaders. But we have become super leaders. We have become supra leaders because we are not conscious of the gifts that we have received from Mother Nature. Okay, so goal, not much, but the goal must include a 7-unit goalkeeper and a 2-unit knower factor. Okay, in knower factor, ancient times it was called a Brahmin. Okay, Brahmin is a knower factor, knowing the method of goal management. Okay, so why knower factor is 2 units? Why Brahmin energy value is 2? Because a knower factor can possibly know the method only after testing the method as a worker factor. You know, who's the worker factor? The follower. Who's the follower? We have been talking about so many types of leaders, but there was only one follower. So follower is the Shudra. So in ancient times, a worker factor was known as Shudra. Why? Because a worker factor works, and whatever knowledge that worker factor has, then the Brahmin gets it. Because Brahmin is an astute observer of the worker factor. So a worker factor, so in one life, you can be a worker factor, Shudra, in the next life, you will be Brahmin. Because now, you know in your consciousness how to do things, whatever that goal was. So next life, you repeat that goal. So you become a Brahmin. Okay. So we need 9-unit energy for realizing the goal. You need a goalkeeper and you need you need a knower factor to manage the goal. So the goal, Lakshya, is 9 units. That energy can be within one person if that is a conscious entity, conscious of the knower factor. A Siddh can achieve the goal any moment. Or it can be within a group of infinite persons if each person is just reproducing what another, which is a letter. Letter means apara. In Hindi, letter means apara. A-P-A-R-A. Okay, which is the next person is doing without knowing that the another is producing what one former. Former means para. That person becomes guru of apara. Okay, so what one former was doing in the past. Okay, so you can be 9, or you can be this, you can be 9 times 2 reproductive energy. So essentially that becomes 9, and if you read the note, reproductive energy, gravitational energy, Gaia power is 100. So 9 times 100 times 100, that's 90,000. Infinity has 90,000. In our body, you have 90,000 messenger RNAs, you have 90,000 proteins. Why? Because it takes sun 90,000 years to go around center of the universe, which is Vega white star. And that 90,000 infinity, the circle, which has a beginning but no end, Ananta. That 90,000 is our leadership energy, Netritra Shakti. So that 90,000 is built into our physical body as 90,000 different types of proteins, 90,000 different types of messenger RNAs. Okay, so Mother Nature already gives us knowledge of the entire Brahman, all for 90,000 moments of time. Okay, so this is energy we need. We need 9 units. Okay, of course, if you're not aware of those 9 units, it can become 90,000. Okay, so if we know clearly, then we need only 9. If we don't know how to achieve the goal in the most proficient way, then it will be 90,000. And if you don't even know how to get one person to learn from each other, then it will be even more. Okay, the maximum energy that you need is 10 power 1024. Okay, so that derivation, I can go in later, but that's the maximum energy that one needs if you don't know anything. You have to do everything on your own. Okay, so that becomes our first draft, our action plan. That's our action plan. We need a goalkeeper and we need a knower factor. So let's validate the thesis that the first draft includes the proficient human relations as a goal. How do you validate the thesis that your work is proficient? So you need to demonstrate that it leads to growth. So your goal should lead to growth. If goal is not leading to growth, then the goal is not leading to a proficient human relations. And if you have growth, of course, it's your choice whether you want to take that growth or not, because you can monetize growth in the form of profits by trading off growth. All of you know that. Or you can capitalize your growth by bringing investors, by bringing debt, by bringing other things in the form of capital, by multiplying the growth until realizing your potential. Right? So you can multiply your growth. And again, the potential is 3 time dimensions of growth. So whatever growth is, potential is 3 times that. So potential is your Om energy, potential energy, AUM, Om. Mantra, Saraswati mantra. Okay, so that's Om is potential. That's 3 times your growth. Okay, so now since we measured our resource requirements in energy units, we need to measure our growth in on resources, net of resource requirements in energy units. The question is, what's the energy of growth? Okay, so energy of growth has 2 elements. First, our energy to sustain the goal over that goal's past, present, and future. Okay, because if we form a goal, then if we go into an organization, a normative model, and we say that we need to now create a normalize this goal is too optimistic. Okay, we have to bring it down, tone it down. And then you go to a transformative model where that goal is not even relevant. The ecosystem has changed. So you say that I need to now bring this goal to 0 and create a new goal. So again, every time you create an optimistic goal, you become pessimistic when you look at the organization reality. And ultimately you come to 0 when you look at the ecosystem reality. So we start with our reality, entity reality, then we sort of go with the organization reality, and then we go to entity reality. By that time, we are completely discouraged. Nothing can be done. Bhagwan Malik hai. Government को कुछ करना चाहिए. CEO नहीं कर रहा है. हम क्या कर सकते हैं? right? So that's the mindset that we bring, right? Because we didn't plan our goal to sustain, right? We didn't have the energy to sustain the goal. So we need the goal to be sustained over 3 time units, and we need everyone's energy to sustain the goal over our past, present, future. So as we are taking that goal forward as a goalkeeper, everybody should remain with us. If all the players, they either have overconfidence or underconfidence or zero confidence, after looking the demeanor of everybody else or looking at kind of, oh, with this team, everybody has lost. How can we win? We have no chance. Okay, so you already lost the battle. You can be the goalkeeper. You may know goal. You may have the energy to take on the world, but everybody else is not prepared. You're not in alignment with everybody else. So what's the energy value of growth? Growth has 6 energy units. Your goals, past, present, and future, your past, present, and future. So we saw that, yes, we can validate 90,009. How do you evaluate 6? That 6 is the number of divisions of a cell in meiosis. So according to biology, in meiosis, each cell divides into 2 daughter cells, and each daughter cell divides into another 2 daughter cells. So each cell divides into 6 daughter cells. So the growth, natural growth, according to Mother Nature, is 6 units with 1 unit. You have to invest 9 units. So why 9 units? Because the other 8 units are immanent within that 1 unit. Because we started with a person who was 1 and conceived a goal of 9 by adding 8 more units. What's an 8? 8 is an octave. So Mother Nature is 8-dimensional. Why 8-dimensional? 4 dimensional space, 3 dimensional time, and 1 of entity. So it's 8-dimensional. Kudrat energy value is 8. Modern science validates our first draft as well as our divine plan. Now we have a conscious plan that we have validated, that we need to realize a growth of 6. Our preparation should be such that first we have those 9 energy units, and we looked at how you can get those 9 energy units either as one person or as a team, sort of sequencing each other, 90,000 or even more. And secondly, we have decided that as a normalization technique, that's a formal technology, as a normalization, we need 6. So that's why it has come down now, 6. So formative energy of 9, normative energy of 6 is what's needed for divine plan. Now, the third element, let's authenticate. We do have energy left for networking a person who can be the actor acting out our organization planning. Somebody has to implement. You cannot just be preparing and aligning. Thus, we can realize both our goal of alignment as well as growth using the stillness as the invisible medium. Stillness has 0 value. Okay, so that's where the Raja becomes Raja, because Raja is still. Lets everybody do things. So that stillness leads to success of the Raja. So far we have 15 energy units, 6 plus 9. And that 15 is the total energy of the meiosis element in the form of the goal and the growth. So if we decide to be a person enjoying our stillness, then we naturally act out the organizational planning Mother Nature has conceived for us. Okay, so you're enjoying the stillness of Mother Nature and the dynamism, that stillness that Mother Nature has. So for enjoying our stillness in oneness with Mother Nature, all we need to do is to be a whole person, not diffusing any energy. So if we are the whole person, then we are relating with ourselves. When we relate with others, we are diffusing energy. When 2 bodies come together, each body exchanges energy with each other. Therefore, they come into an equilibrium condition with 0 energy in each body. Okay, so the only way you can maintain a human relations in a proficient way is by making yourself whole. If you are not whole, if you have over-optimism, if you have pessimism, if you are thinking about past, future, if you are not who you are, In that case, you're always going to experience entropy in your enjoyment. You need to be the holistic person. Okay. So once we add the person with unit energy, the sense of organization planning 16 units. That's the 16 Kalain that Shri Krishna has, 16 Kalain Ma Durga has. 16 is the essence of Mother Nature. Mother Nature is 8. That's a visible half of Mother Nature. The totality of Mother Nature is 16 units. That's what makes everything in the universe. It's the oneness of the growth element, 1 and 6. Oneness of the growth element. So all growth that we see, all things that we see, their oneness is that 16. That's what is Madhusudan, that's Ma Durga, that's the divine light. That's what who we are. That's what is called Param Mukti, because absolute becomes in us. It's not absolute consciousness. Paramatma, it's the one who created Paramatma. Paramatma is the absolute consciousness, it's outside. So it's whatever 16 is, whatever you're reproducing, that 16 times reproductive energy is 1600. That's what is Paramatma. That's what is present. So the goal is not to million of Paramatma. That's not going to give you absolute freedom. You will have to again incarnate, whether as a manager. It's not going to give you absolute freedom as a manager too. So you need to get to that 16. That's the mantra. Energy value of mantra is 16. Taboo, prejudice, and discrimination, it's a natural tendency. Status quo becomes a taboo if it does not move with the time. Status quo prejudices everyone moving with time. And eventually we discriminate because we also wish to move with time. We don't want to remain stillness. Everybody is moving, we must be moving. So people say, everybody is doing this. Vipin, why are you computing energy value? Nobody has done it ever in the history of human life. You should be moving with time that everybody has done. Why are you not moving with time? Why are you still focusing on energy, on everything? So there are always institutional pressures for you to move with the time. Of course, moving with time is important, but if you can move time with you, if you develop that power to create the absolute and absolute consciousness through your knowledge and through your astuteness and conscious, it's not wisdom. It's really about wisdom doesn't get you there, because wisdom is from that 16. So it's really reason and intuition. Those are two factors you need. You need reason and intuition, because wisdom is somebody else's. Reason is yours, intuition is yours. That's what is going to give you freedom from past effect. That's called mukti. And it's going to give you freedom from present effect. That's called moksha. Let me just end with this, essentially concluding my remarks. Act, activate, and move fast to attain the desirable goal before passing the passing phase. That's what is the mantra for proficient human relations in a simple way. Why? Because Mother Nature is moving every moment. All we need to do is to stay in oneness with that standstill of Mother Nature. Okay, so let me take questions. Have you learned anything? Has it been a fruitful 80, 90 minutes, or is it a waste of time? Or...
No, sir, I think it was pretty insightful. Something that we haven't really looked at in this particular manner. So it was a new perspective for all of us, and I'm sure others also would share this viewpoint.
Madhukar, any other thoughts, any other questions?
Exactly, sir. I second Madhukar's opinion that it was really insightful and a complete different perspective of looking at things, and how at an individual level, if you are able to, rise above your consciousness, then human relations will automatically get better. Sir, I have one question regarding the last code that you showed. You told about the passing phase. What is the passing phase? Is it the time that's, continuously, I mean, by delta, it's continuously changing and accelerate. It's continuously increasing, What is the passing phase? What does
Very
it
good.
imply?
Okay, so passing phase is, as I mentioned, as we know, that time is always moving. So if you have done your preparation, that preparation is going to be valid for only a certain moment, only for a particular time. Okay, just like Mahurata. Right. So you create your own Mahurata by kind of doing all your preparation, because if you have the preparation, that's the Mahurata. You don't need to go and look at the astrological charts. Okay, the Mahurata is only that when the Mother Nature has done her preparation, but if you have already done your preparation, you're ready. If you wait too long, then you're not going to be successful. You may be ahead of times. That's okay, but you, a lot of people, so I'm writing this year 12 books, okay, more than 1 million words, not a single reference, everything new. And so people ask me that, why are you publishing one book every month? And I have a very simple answer, that if Mother Nature were to create January month and then say that I'm going to wait to hear feedback from my children, how is January? Somebody will say it's too hot. Okay, somebody will say it was too cold. Somebody will say it's too rainy. Somebody will say it's too dry. And then essentially Mother Nature will not have time and will get confused whether to create a different February, and she will just reproduce January. And now the people who enjoyed January and now they get the same thing again. So their happiness goes down a little bit. And as that continues, they become totally disgusted with the same condition. Okay, so it's the same thing that a lot of people say that you are ahead of time. You should, the problem is not you are ahead of time, but you stopped being ahead of time. You stopped confidence in yourself because everybody was trying to pull you backward. There are so many people who are telling me that, why are you publishing 12 books? We can't keep up. We can't read. I say, it's not meant for you. It's meant for children. It's meant for our grandchildren. Because your consciousness is already polluted by science. This is science beyond science. Because science has become ideas and theories without energy values. If you don't have energy values, how can you substantiate what scientists are saying? That's why scientists are becoming so rich. And they're going to space. And everybody is becoming poor. If science had the solution, then scientists would not become rich. Everybody else will become rich. We wouldn't have increasing inequities. So science is polluting our mind because science is not correct science. I have shown in my work, E is not equal to mc square. If we define E equal to mc square, E is 0. Then I can say E equal to mc cube. Mathematically, I can show anything. Empirically, it has never been proven. So you make somebody an Einstein and you say that he is the greatest god of science, because he never proved anything empirically. He did not show anything empirically. He only proved it mathematically. I can assume anything. I can, because when mass is 0, that's when E equal to mc square. That's the only under condition. No other condition E equal to mc square. And I show that, I mathematically derive that. It's all given in our ancient wisdom. The reason why we have dusted our ancient wisdom and contaminated our ancient wisdom is because we are always running after, not us, our ancestors also, for the last many thousand years. We have been running after the knowledge from other countries, thinking that our knowledge, if it is constant, it must be bad and outdated. And all the new knowledge which is coming, new research which is coming, that must be better. And therefore, we contaminate our consciousness and we make sure that we become the followers of the new research which is being done. We have no resources to do that kind of research. And therefore, we are falling behind and behind. Of course, on a superficial level, it looks like that we are becoming wealthier. But if you look at proportionate wealth, because you can always multiply money, all of you know that, paper money has no worth. Ultimately, it's about proportionate wealth. And in proportionate terms, we are going down and down and down.
Right, so thank you so much. I think that was very insightful. And on behalf of both the sections, sir, allow me to thank you for your insights. I think this was an absolutely fresh perspective that we received today. while we do study a lot of human relations and leadership theories, I think this was a completely new lens, and I'm sure this will propel a lot of us to rethink whatever we know and see things in new light. So thank you so much, sir, for all your insights taking. Thank you for agreeing to take the session with us, and thank you for your time.
Okay, all the best. Okay, and I'll share the recording with all of you, and feel free to share that with your family members, others, whoever you want to share.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Vipin. I echo thoughts of Mr. Madhukar here. Once you will share the recording, we will have opportunity to revisit it because you shared something which is quite comprehensive within a very limited time period. So it is important that all of us revisit the video and do the mathematical credit calculations of our own personal lives, so that we know where do we stand in the scheme that you have shared. So once again, thank you on behalf of the whole class, and we hope to stay in touch with you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for sparing your Sunday because it was too early for me to come to your classes. So thank you for bearing with me from California.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great day. Yeah.